Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar with Certis, TPC and the OSHA Education Center, entitled Hazard Avoidance Series. We're going to be talking about walking and working surfaces today. My name is Ryan Smith, your host for the afternoon, and we're joined here by our speaker today, Doug Michaels, who's one of our OSHA approved instructors doing OSHA outreach training with us, and our manager of our instructor-led team there doing safety training. He's going to share with you all the latest best practices and information about walking and working surfaces on today's session. Before we get started, I'd like to just run through a couple little housekeeping items for you all here. The first one being that this session is being recorded, and this recording is going to be made available on demand for folks who have registered for this webinar within a few days of this webinar date. So be on the lookout for an email from us in the coming days on how to access that on-demand recording. Also, along with that, we're planning on giving you the PDF of these slides so you can watch back. You don't have to necessarily take pictures of the slides you're seeing, so we'll make sure those are made available to you as well. And then finally, this session is live and interactive, so feel free to use that Q&A feature. You're going to see at the bottom of your toolbar here for Zoom, you should see a button that says Q&A. That's our questions and answers. You can go ahead and type in any question you have for Doug, and at the end of our session, we'll be able to get to as many of those questions as possible before we call it a day. So in the name of being an interactive session, we're going to do something with you right now as a little introductory activity just to make sure your screen's working and that you can see what we can see. And that is, we're going to launch a little poll with just 2 questions that are going to pop up on your screen right now. So you should see some questions popping up on your screen. And we're just try to choose the best answer to these questions that you can. And that is, how would you best describe your role at your organization? Are you in the safety/EHS, the environmental health and safety arm of your business? Are you in the maintenance team with your supervision? Or are you in the supervision management? Or are you in operations? Or would you say you're more in the training/HR space? If none of these apply to you, you can skip this question. That's okay. And then finally, question number 2, have you or your staff completed an OSHA 10-hour or 30-hour course in the last year? Yes, no, or maybe not sure. So we're going to give you a chance to fill in your answers there. It looks like the answers are flowing in, which is great. Yeah, all you got to really do to submit your answers, just click on the one you want for each question and then hit submit at the end of the poll. Should register there. All right, looks like 100% of you have answered, so perfect. I'm going to end the poll. And I'm going to share the results with everyone here to see a little bit more about who's here today. So most of you, 50% of you, are in the safety and EH&S space, which makes a lot of sense if we're on a safety and EH&S webinar. So we're really looking forward to speaking mostly with you, but there are folks out here, about 14% of you, who are in the maintenance field and managing your folks, supervising at 15%. And some of you are in the training space looking to train folks, 10% of you, and 11% of you are in operations. So we have a good mix of people all around the map. And then it's right around a 50-50 split, 51 to 45%. Yes, have taken 10-hour and 30-hour, or no, have not taken a 10-hour or 30-hour in the past year. We say the past year really because that's the latest and greatest of an OSHA 10-hour, 30-hour if you've taken one in the last year. And about 4% of you are not sure if you have or haven't in your team. So this is a perfect way to get you started on some of the latest information. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing that poll. So that window should have disappeared from your screen. And now the thing I want you to make sure you all have as full screen as possible is our title slide here that says Hazard Avoidance Series. And make sure that's as large as possible on your screen so you can see all the great information we're about to present to you. And we're going to go ahead and get started by handing it over to Doug. Hey, thank you so much for being here, Doug.
Thank you, Ryan. My name is Doug Michaels, and I am a trainer here with TPC. I also manage the instructors for all of our ILT classes. Today, we're going to be talking about walking working surfaces, and this is our hazardous avoidance series. And I'll start out by just thanking Ryan for moderating this. Here's today's objectives. We're going to identify hazards in the workplace associated with walking and working surfaces. We're going to try and identify best practices for eliminating or controlling hazards associated with walking and working surfaces in the workplace. And we're going to try and recognize the employer's requirements to protect its workers against these hazards in the workplace. So just by jumping right in, there's a number of fact sheets that you can find on slip, trips, and falls. Just a little bit of information on this. About 15% of all accidental deaths, it's second to motor vehicles, come from slips, trips, or falls. And they make up a majority of those general industry accidents. You can look up this fact sheet right here. It gives you some good definitions and background. Also, it gives a lot of good tips and definitions about guardrail system, safety net system, personal fall arrest systems. And if you can get to the OSHA website, you can type this in and you can download this from any of those from the OSHA.gov website. So if we look at this document, we can see, and I'll just run through it briefly, the background. Basically, OSHA estimates that approximately on average 202,000 serious injuries or lost work days occur from fatalities or lost work days from slips, trips, and falls. 345 fatalities occur annually among workers directly related. And so basically OSHA looked at this and came up with some guidelines and rules, things that need to be in place, such as guardrail systems. Any elevated unprotected area should have a barrier erected that is along unprotected areas or exposed sides or edges of areas, walking surfaces. You should have a safety net system if you're in a horizontal or semi-horizontal style barrier that needs to stop you from falling. You see this a lot in general industry. I've worked in the plastic industry where you've got these huge vats of resin on top of injection molding machines, and these need to be serviced from time to time. So you should have some type of fall arrest system in place. I've also worked in places where they've had a fall arrest system working on machinery that's being built in the warehouse, and then they have to climb on top of the equipment to service it or continue building that equipment. But this document, it gives really good definitions on a lot of the things that pertain to slip, trips, and falls. Talks about travel resistant system, ladder safety, fixed ladders, portable ladders. If you get a chance to take a look at this document, like I said, you can download this on the OSHA.gov website. This one's titled OSHA's Final Rule to Update and Align, Provide Greater Flexibility in the General Industry Walking, Working Surface, and Fall Protection Standards. So with that being said, let's just dive right into some of these hazards that we probably see on a day-to-day basis, such as grease, oil, water, ice, snow if you live in a cold climate. I had recently taught a OSHA 10 class, and one of the individuals had multiple buildings, and from time to time, people would have to be going between those buildings, and it was in a cold environment. And so one of the things you also have to take into consideration is not only inside your facilities, but getting to and from the different buildings. and making sure that snow and ice and water are cleaned up, because those can also cause slips, trips, and falls. Improper footwear, that's huge. Definitely having the right footwear, slip resistant heels, toes, things like that, boots where they should be. I've worked in a facility that had a washdown unit that built inspection machines. And once the machine was built, they would run it through a vigorous washdown process. And so the floor was constantly wet and slippery from different chemicals and solvents that were used on those stainless steel machines. So definitely having proper footwear and proper safeguards in place for some of those surfaces is important. There's many situations which can cause slips, trips, and falls. And all of those situations should be dealt with accordingly. It could be polished floors, it could be loose flooring, it could be uneven working surfaces, clutter. I think we've all experienced a little bit of clutter in the workplace, and it really needs to be cleaned. Any place that where employees are walking on a day-to-day basis, and it's a high traffic area, should be free from clutter. Electrical cords. I've worked for companies that in the warehouse, they're running electrical cords. And if you're going to do something like that, you need to make sure that those cords are not in the walkways. I've been fortunate to work with a company that really followed safety guidelines and basically used a color coding vest system to look at where all the employees were on a given manufacturing day. And it makes it very easy to figure out who is in the wrong location if you're wearing a different colored vest, such as the washdown crew would only have blue vests. And so if you saw a red vest in that area, you knew that maybe a hazard could be there if you're not familiar with that area, or that you're not wearing the proper PPE to be in that area. We also had a paint shop and a woodworking shop. So those areas had different colored vests as well, just to make sure that, those people were wearing the proper PPE in those areas. But often some of these hazards are obviously, they're ignored, and such as keeping walkways and stairs clean. Sometimes you'll find, people leave tools or manuals on the stairway, especially a high traffic area. Extension cords is a big issue as well. Hoses, lines, when they're not in use, those lines need to be kept out of the way. The extension cords need to be picked up. And then, of course, wearing the proper PPE is important as well to prevent you from slipping and tripping. One example I can give is a very basic example would be a stairway. I worked for a company that had a stairway, and it was the main stairway to the second floor of the facility. And they constantly had people falling down the stairway because they were texting on their phone. So sometimes that slip, trip, and fall is a distraction due to electronic devices. So the company then proceeded to videotape some of these people falling down the stairs, not to make fun of them, but to bring to light, hey, when you're walking up and down the stairs, you need to hold on to the handrail. And they actually put up signs, indicating no electronic devices when going up and down stairs. And after about a month or two of videotaping, they found that the biggest violators of this were the upper management, who were going up and down this main hallway or this main stairway. And so what they ended up doing was posting their picture in the monthly newsletter under the safety hazards. And basically, the stairs, obviously people were falling, and other than shutting off the stairs or blocking them off so that people couldn't use them, they ended up imposing some fines if you got caught with your cell phone or electronic device while walking down those stairs. So it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's on the ground that causes you to slip and trip and fall. It's your electronic device nowadays. Could be a tablet, could be a cell phone. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, the proper footwear is very, very important, depending on where you're at in your facility. So controlling some of these hazards, keeping the working surfaces clean and dry, and appropriate means to assure slip resistant, types of soled shoes that match the job for your task, make sure that it's possible to reduce slips. Wet operations should be properly drained. I know that in the washdown area, there were these grates in the center of the washdown area. And if you lifted up the grates inside there was a drain, and that would constantly get clogged with different materials and debris. So that would constantly have to get cleaned out. If it didn't, then water would pool up underneath that spill area where it was supposed to be draining. And obviously that could be a hazard. So making sure that those surfaces are clean and dry, making sure you got proper footwear, that your drainage areas are cleaned up immediately, and make sure you clean or report spills. I've worked at, like I said, a plastic manufacturer, and they would use water to cool down the plastic after it was being molded. And one of the machines was leaking all the time, and it would leave huge pools of resin, cleaned off resin water. And those definitely need to be cleaned up or marked wet with the signage, or make sure that the maintenance team is on top of cleaning up those spills and not left unattended, because obviously if it's in a high traffic area, it could cause somebody to slip unintentionally. Okay. Removing ice and snow, like I said, in cold water areas or cold weather areas, you want to make sure that if you have walkways and things between buildings and facilities, that those are cleaned as well, not to mention the entranceways and exit ways. The other thing that comes into play is if people have to exit out of the building because of a hazard, you don't want to create another hazard, right, as they're trying to exit. So just making sure that some of those things are adhered to will help prevent. We all do it for housekeeping. We all have some examples. I'm sure you can think of some. These are just 3 examples that I use in my trainings. Obviously, if we look at the first picture, you can see that there's some air hose on the ground. It looks like there's a piece of wood just leaning. That could be a fall hazard, or the cable, the air hose on the ground, that could be a trip hazard. Also too, on the stairway in the back there's a clipboard. It seems like something very minor, but that definitely could be a slip hazard. And then of course the bar that's leaning up against the wall. Obviously, if somebody walked by that, they could trip and fall. The other thing too is, and I don't know if any of you have worked where they have different surfaces, and some of them are makeshift or they're worn, like as in the second picture here that you see, the wood is scraping away. And with this, you want to make sure that flooring is sturdy enough, and it's not going to create a hole where you're going to trip and fall. So even this is a hazard because somebody walking by, not looking, not paying attention, could trip on this flooring that's wearing away. And then, of course, any openings in the ground, they should be clearly marked. If they can't be covered, somebody needs to be near that opening and make sure that people don't fall in there. This kind of looks like a drainage area, like I was talking about before, and you can see underneath there's a bunch of debris inside this grate. But the grate should come all the way together. There should never be an opening on the floor like this, unless it should never be unattended. It should be attended at all times. Moving along, I've got a couple other examples here, such as cords, like we see here, hoses, open drawers. If you're walking through a shop area, and sometimes the technicians leave or the maintenance people leave the drawers of their toolbox open. If it's low enough, it could be a trip hazard. Here we see a cable in the middle. It looks like they clearly tried to mark it, but it's in a slip hazard already because you've got an uneven surface and you've got water buildup and, of course, gravel. And then also in the background there, you can see it looks like there's a pipe going directly over that gravel mound. So even that, things like this, it's good to mark it, but this is still a trip hazard. So it should be addressed. And then, of course, if you're in manufacturing, that sometimes some of the items that you're using don't fit on the skid. You have things hanging off, whether it's, in this case, it's piping, but it could be anything from materials, especially materials stacked on top of each other, where the weight limits don't comply. And so you get a couple of skits that are leaning into a walk area, and that's obviously not good. So rule of thumb, obviously you want to make sure that your floors or walking areas are clean and free from some of these hazards. Controlling some of these hazards, obviously making sure that aisles and pathways, they should be well lit, clean, and marked. Storage of materials and equipment should not interfere with those walkways. So if we're talking about scraps and debris or wastes that have come from the manufacturing side, those need to be removed as often as possible. I've seen in the product inspection area, when you go to a customer and the machine is not functioning properly and it starts to reject the product that is going through it. And when it rejects, some of those items it's rejecting are going at 300-400 parts per minute. And after a few minutes, you've got a buildup of wasted material that is either overflowing in a scrap bin, or if somebody doesn't shut the machine down, it will keep creating a waste pile. So keeping up with those scraps, those debris, the waste items is key to making sure that people are not falling, especially if it's in a walk area, a high traffic area. Trip hazards such as loose flooring, carpeting, uneven surfaces should be repaired and reported. So obviously don't leave those unattended. Hoses and cables should be routed away from active work zones. I've worked in a facility that had those cables. When you were running them, they had these little boxes on the floor where you'd open the box, you'd run the cable through the box and then shut it. And it was clearly marked that there was a trip hazard there. But it was run in such a way that it was not in those high traffic areas. So sometimes I understand it's difficult. You do have to put these cables close to that walking area, and you want to make sure that you are taking every precaution to not create another hazard. So definitely look into some of these controlling techniques that you can put your hoses and your cables in. Obviously, you don't want extension cords running from one end of your warehouse all the way to the other end of the warehouse where forklifts are driving over it and high traffic. People are walking back and forth, people are trying to move materials. So just make sure that those walkways are clean. I've worked in areas where they've outlined the walkways with yellow and red and blue, and it was color coded, so you knew if you were coming to a blue area and you didn't have the proper PPE, you couldn't go any further. Or if you were coming to a red lines in the walkway, that you needed to change or add different PPE that is required for those areas. So that's one way that you can do that as well. But obviously keeping things clean, keeping it out of those high traffic areas is very, very important. Fall hazards are important as well, especially if you're working on elevated surfaces, working on top of tank surfaces, anything 4 feet or greater. You probably want to make sure that you have some type of fall protection. Like I said, if you're working on tops of tanks or towers or machines or platforms or runways, elevated surfaces, lower surfaces that are in the ground, such as open pits and vats, definitely you want to make sure that those are covered so people don't fall in those. One of the things that I can use as an example is obviously oil change companies. So there are pits, 3 or 4 pits in these facilities, and they're never left unattended, right? And if they are, there's some type of netting that is underneath it to make sure that people don't fall through. There's also, if you've ever worked on car lifts, some type of lifts like that, any type of automobile lift, things like that, anything with an opening in the ground should never be left unattended. And then the next type would be controlling those fall hazards by using, guardrails or temporary or permanent structures to make sure that people don't fall, such as in this picture here. We see all the way around the top of the tank, there is a guardrail, and it looks like a tow rail as well. But personal fall arrest systems should be used as well. There's a couple of good videos that you can find online, personal fall arrest systems that talk about them. I have a friend of mine that works in the aviation industry, and when they're working on aircrafts, they have these personal fall arrest systems. I know that I've seen other types of fall arrest systems where you're hooked to the harness and there's like a whip where you're on the second level or you're above the equipment and you're working. And if you were to fall, the fall arrest system would grab you and the whip would slowly lower you down to the ground. If we're looking at this tower here, basically there's a little story that goes with this. On January 22nd, 2009, a 33-year-old Hispanic was injured after falling from an 8-foot step ladder, and a bucket that was filled with cleaning solution was tied with a rag to the top of the ladder. So basically, I guess the guy was in there trying to clean this, and the chemical fell on top of him, and the victim was taken to the hospital. So something like that, where somebody is injured, there's an emergency, somebody is taken to the hospital. This warrants probably an OSHA inspection due to somebody was injured, somebody taken to the hospital. More than likely, OSHA did an inspection at this location. So definitely fall arrest systems, if they're in place, you probably should make sure that you are properly trained on how to use them, and make sure that you're using it properly and it's inspected. These items are inspected like they should be. Other types of hazards and controls are obviously ladders, scaffolding, scissor lifts, stairways. I know a couple of the companies I've worked for have used the scissor lifts and scaffolding to work on equipment, not just construction, but in manufacturing. When they're trying to work on a piece of equipment, there is scaffolding involved. And making sure that you're using the right ladder for the job, right? One of the things that's very basic with ladders is making sure that you are using the right ladder. If you just look at the side of the ladder, more than likely, it'll tell you what that ladder is used for. Not to mention, a lot of the ladders are color coded. So if you're working on electricity, you probably shouldn't be using a red colored or an orange colored ladder. It should probably have some type of blue material and make sure that it's static resistant. So in this example, this guy's using the ladder improperly. It's not fully opened, and he's climbing on it, and it doesn't look like it's opened properly. In this picture, this guy obviously has no harness, and he's leaning over the side of the scaffolding, which looks like it's bowing a little bit, and that's not good either. And then the scissor lift, obviously, they can tip over. So if you are not harnessed to it, also too, you shouldn't be in a scissor lift if you're outside and the wind is above 28 miles an hour. And then, of course, this last example, which is kind of hard to see, but obvious maybe to some of you, is anything over 4 steps needs a guardrail. And I don't see any guardrails here. Not to mention all the tools that are sitting on all the steps off to the left side there. And then, of course, looks like the bottom step has been bent. A couple of them actually look bent. So this is probably an unsafe stairway and could cause a trip or a fall. Basic types of ladders, obviously, there's a step ladder, there's an extension ladder, and then there's fixed ladders. Basically, use the ladder. You never want to get on the top step of the ladder. You should never be standing on the very top rung. That's a big no-no. Make sure if you're using extension ladders that the ladder protrudes at least 3 feet above the working surface where you're going to be. And these cage ladders, if you have some of these cage ladders, more than likely, if they're outside, they're rusted, they're not very sturdy. So obviously take caution when you're doing that. And I believe that, if it is damaged, it should be repaired, or you should have some type of fall arrest system if you're going up a cage ladder like that. There is another document, Stairways and Ladders. It's the Guide to OSHA's Rules. It's a really good document that talks all about ladders and ladder safety. And you can just Google stairways and ladders, and you'll find it under OSHA.gov. So basically, one of the leading causes of fatalities and injuries is ladders. Use the right ladder for the right job. Use ladders that are free from defects. So if you see the ladder is damaged, you shouldn't be using it. I know a lot of people are like, I paid good money for that ladder. Well, ladder, your safety and the safety of employees is important. So if the ladder is damaged, it should be destroyed and it should not be used. Don't try to bend it back into place, or wire tie a piece of wood to one of the rungs so that you can keep using the ladder. Better to be safe than to be hurt, right? And of course, I've already talked about this. You should never be standing on top of that top rung. If you're working with ladders, you want to make sure that you're using the right ladder. Obviously, this guy needs a new, a taller ladder. More importantly, he should probably make sure if he's got a screwdriver in his hand, that electricity is turned off. But you never want to use the top 2 steps of the ladder. Okay, that's rule of thumb. If you need a larger ladder, tell your supervisor. Make sure that your employer knows that the ladder that they provided is not tall enough for what you need to do your job. And that's only for your safety and obviously for theirs. Things like this, if the ladder rung is or the ladder is bent in some way, you don't want to use that ladder. Even though the rest of the ladder seems to be pretty stable, it's still a defect in the ladder, and you can hurt yourself. And when in doubt, you can look at the side of your ladder, and typically most ladders have instructions on it on how to use that ladder. Now that requires some reading. And also too, with ladder safety, there's something called a 3-point of contact, which you should know if you're working on ladders. But this is a fall hazard, right? So if you're trying to carry tools and you're going up the ladder, well, you've only got one hand to carry those tools and one hand on the ladder, and your feet are on the ladder. So that's only 2 points of contact. So to avoid slips and falls, you want to make sure you have 3 points of contact. And the easiest way to figure out if that ladder is going to work for your job is to read the ladder. Read the instructions on that ladder. And when in doubt, ask your supervisor or manager, hey, is this ladder the right ladder? Or if you have questions about the ladder, make sure you ask your employer to get you the proper ladder. Remember, like I said, you need 3 points of contact on the ladder at all times. So if you're carrying tools, you should probably have some sort of tool belt. Don't have things in the hand. So the picture on the left is a no-no. The picture on the right is the proper way to climb up a ladder. So moving along, fixed industrial ladders. This is what I talked about earlier, where you can see in this picture, the ladder is clearly got some rust marks on there, and could fail if you fall backwards. So if you're climbing up something like this, you have to be equipped with some type of fall arrest system. If installed or after 2018, fall arrest systems, you need to have it according to OSHA. And fall arrest or ladder safety systems must provide protection throughout the entire vertical distance of the ladder. So what they mean is you shouldn't have up to the ledge there. It should allow you to be able to climb that whole ladder and be safe as you're climbing the whole ladder. It shouldn't, your fall arrest system shouldn't just be for half this distance. It should cover the full distance, the full motion of travel.
Hey there, Doug. As our questions are coming in, I think we got about 10 good minutes before we should start answering them, if that works for you.
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
Moving right along, controlling some of these fall hazards, such as stairway. If you look at this stairway, it is very, very steep. Also down at the bottom there, where the stairway is, it looks like cables and pipes are right at the bottom of that stairway. And so the design of this stairway is clearly, obviously, to get somebody from the ground up to the top working area, but also too, it is a hazard, right? Because if somebody trips and falls, they're gonna fall right into that pipe down at the bottom. So not really sure what the manufacturer could do to prevent this, other than make sure that people are taking their time, or signage that says caution, watch your step, something like that points out, hey, if you fall, you're definitely going to hurt yourself. So stairway safety comes down to proper design, construction, and use of those stairways. The other thing that kind of bothers me is you got a lot of cables here on the side, and obviously they're not marked, so we don't know what those cables are. Don't know if there's electricity in those cables, don't know if they're electrical cords, but that definitely should be looked at as well, because if somebody trips and falls and they go to grab one of these cables and it does have electricity, that's not good either. So proper design and construction, stairs, there's minimum tread widths and minimum depths that stairs have to be strong enough to handle a minimum of 1,000-pound live load, at least 22 inches wide, installed on angles between 30 and 50 degrees, and no more than a 1/4 inch variation. And keep in mind, anything over 4 steps, you need a guardrail system. So if you've got 3 and a lip at the top, you're okay. But if you've got 4 steps, you should have a guardrail system or a handrail system, such as this: 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 steps, so you need to have some type of handrail. Okay. Stair rails prevent falls from openings on the side, and they also must be present on the unprotected sides. So if you're walking up a stairway, and like the picture we saw prior, there's no guardrails on either side or handrails on either side, it should be on both sides of that stairway. And then, of course, it needs to be between 36 and 37 distance. The height of that handrail should be there. So in this example that we saw before, this clearly is an improper stairway. The stairs are bent, damaged. You've got tools on both sides. It looks like at the top there, the step is bent so much that if somebody was walking up, they could actually trip on the lip on the top of that platform, whatever that platform is. So make sure that those stairs, if you have something like this in your facility, you get it taken care of and get a handrail on it. Obviously, the tools, that's a no-no, shouldn't be on there. And if it's damaged, the stair run should be replaced. And we talked about this already, which is the same walkway and those hazards going up and down this stairway. We talked about that already. Here's another example of intentionally, it looks like they did a good job, right? They've got a handrail system. They've got more than 3 or 4 steps, so they have something in place. But I don't think that's the proper distance. And some of these steps are wood, some are metal, and they're not even. So there's different distances between all of these, and that could pose a problem. Not to mention the fact that the water container shouldn't be on there, or the garbage can at the bottom. So things like this, it happens, but it should be corrected. And then here would be an example of proper guardrail system, proper toe board, standard railings consisting of the top rail, the mid rail, and the post should be a height of 42 inches, plus or minus 3. The mid rail should be about 21 inches, and then the standard toe board should be about 3.5 inches high, and not more than a 1/4 inch clearance above the floor. So this is a good example of, making sure that whoever's climbing up on top of this piece of machinery, they are well protected. There's a gate up top here when they get above the ladder. There's a toe board, there's a mid rail, and a top rail. To prevent employees from being injured from falls, employer must guard every floor hole so that the worker can't fall in it. They must provide guardrails and toe boards around every opening platform or runway that is 4 feet or higher off the ground. Obviously, identifying these hazards, standing on top of the ladder, that's a definite no-no. Using the ladder, an extension ladder, and then making sure that it's level by stacking pieces of wood, that's not appropriate. And then this guy is obviously, he's working outside on a roof, trying to stand on the top rung of the ladder. Those are all hazards. Identifying the hazard here, obviously it's a bent rung, and that could cause a problem, could cause somebody to slip. Here's an example of the cage missing when you're climbing up the cage ladder. And then off to the right here, there's no guardrail at the top of this canister where they're working. So, some of the obvious things right here, like I said, you need to have a guardrail here. This is a man-made stair. There's no mid-rail, top rail for this platform up here. Somebody could fall. Here's a makeshift stair, and they're not even, so that could be a problem. This looks like it's a carnival ride. And then, of course, scaffolding with cables and no toe board here on this side, so somebody could fall or trip. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. So if you wanted to connect with any member of our team, you can reach out to sales@tpctraining.com. And I'm going to turn it back over to Ryan.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Doug. Now, as we start getting into the question and answer period, I want to remind folks that we do have some questions coming in, and you can feel free to start if you've got some questions that popped up over the last 45 or so minutes. Feel free to pop them in the Q&A button, and we'll try to get to your question before the top of the hour, before we're done today. The first question we have in the Q&A for you, Doug, is a more kind of high-level question from Brian, and he's asking, is there value in OSHA 10? And then to follow up on that, what about for NYC folks who are doing the SST, which we know is the site safety trainings? I know those are just a required part of safety training in NYC in particular, which we do offer as well online. So you can definitely learn more about that at OSHAeducationcenter.com. But is there anything else you'd like to add about SST, Doug, as well as OSHA 10? What's the value of OSHA 10?
Well, the value of OSHA 10 is to become aware of your rights as a worker, as well as the employer's responsibilities to your safety. If you know anything about OSHA, it was created to make sure that all employees have a safe and healthful workplace and are able to, do their job, whether it's in manufacturing, whether it's in construction, or general industry in general. There's regulations that your employer has to follow. And if anything, it just makes you become aware of the different types of hazards that you can come across in the workplace today. Is there an advantage? Yeah, if your PPE is not proper, you may develop health risks. You may have other problems going further. If the PPE that you're using for a particular job is not the proper PPE, you could be injured. So really, OSHA 10 is just to allow you to get a brief overview of how OSHA allows you to have certain rights to be protected against any harm that you may encounter in general industry. One of the examples that I gave was the washdown area for the company that I was working for. And I try to imagine if they didn't have something in place for that, right? You would have people walking by that area. And if they were using morotic acid or something to clean stainless steel, and that got in somebody's eye, and they didn't have the proper eye protection or didn't know to have the proper eye protection, that could cause a problem for the individual who is burned by the acid. So definitely learning about OSHA 10 and taking the class and getting certified, it teaches you about all the different aspects of OSHA and how they are there to protect the everyday worker.
Definitely. And kind of as a follow-up to that, for OSHA 30, when do you think that threshold might be between going from OSHA 10 course to someone who should take an OSHA 30? Or where do you think that drawing line is?
Yeah, so OSHA 30 will give you more of in-depth about some of the topics. I like to think of it as OSHA 10 is a brief overview, and then OSHA 30 deals with more of the administrative side, how to file complaints, how to list worker injuries, things like that. But more in-depth into some of those topics. It goes into lockout, tagout. It goes into the different aspects of slip, trips, and falls. And really, by taking your OSHA 30, that gives you more the administrative side, and as well as knowledge on some of these different topics that are covered. Like I said, I like to think as OSHA 10 as a brief overview. I know in the OSHA 10, we talk about bloodborne pathogens, but we don't talk in depth about bloodborne pathogens. We just touch on it. Or we talk about industrial safety. We talk for about an hour on industrial safety and industrial hygiene. So these are just brief overviews. I like to think of it that way so that you get an idea of, how OSHA is there to protect the everyday worker. And by taking the OSHA 10 class and then taking the OSHA 30 class, you are diving more into those topics and learning about the administrative side as well.
For sure. I think we have time for a couple more questions here that we see coming in.
Okay.
The first one here, Doug, is what would you say, at what height would you say you need your stairs to have a door at the top of them or a gate at the top of them? And I know how ladders work with kind of the, is it the general industry 4-foot rule, and then construction
Right.
6-foot, you need that fall protection. Is that the same with stairs? Is there a gate required after a certain height of stairs, or is it only ladders?
I believe it's only for ladders. There should be a gate. Stairs, typically there has to be a handrail and a mid rail or some type of handrail for anything over 4 steps, right? At the top, if there is a ladder, there should be a gate. Obviously, the gate should be installed properly. It should be, typically you find it on ladders, but I mean, it could be installed as a precautionary to prevent people from falling backwards down those stairs. Clearly, that picture that we saw where those stairs were very narrow, and leading down to the pipe at the bottom where somebody could fall. I suppose the customer could install some type of gate system there, but typically you would find those gates on ladder systems.
Excellent. And another question posed by Margarita, which will close us out, is how can we access more training by our company? Let's say we know how to do that for sure. How do we go about accessing more training if we feel like we need some additional knowledge? It's become clear that we need some knowledge. Where's a good place to start? Well, I can definitely start you there, Margarita, by giving you this phone number and this email address you can contact and let us know what topics you're looking for you or your workforce, and we can get you set up. Or you can check out OSHA Education Center. You see our brand of our kind of OSHA 10 and 30 courses are called our OSHA Education Center.com. You can also check out that and see what kind of safety offerings. We also offer electrical and mechanical, kind of more hands-on trades specific training as well as arc flash electrical safety, and everywhere in between. We offer a huge suite. We're one of the biggest training companies out there for the amount of stuff that we can offer. So definitely start there at OSHAeducationcenter.com. I think if you're looking for more safety training, and we can get you set up from what you need. So I think with that, I think we're all set. I think we answered all the questions we could in the time. We want to honor everyone's hour with us here today. And I just want to say thank you, Doug, so much for sharing your thoughts and your expertise with us. Really appreciate that. And just to remind everyone here that this recording will be available on demand for folks within a few business days, so be on the lookout for that. And we look forward to seeing you again soon on our next webinar. Thank you all, everyone, for being here, and have a great day.